March is Women's History Month, a time to look at the many contributions women have made throughout history. But lately, there have been a number of studies examining the lives of black women, from their body sizes in comparison to white women to assessing that they're less likely to get married. The latest survey comes from the Washington Post and the Kaiser Family Foundation. And surprisingly, they found that contrary to popular belief, black women see themselves just fine. Recently, in our Washington Watch studio, Krista Thompson, national staff writer for the Washington Post, Rahel Tesfamarian, founder of UrbanCusp.com, and Howard University professor Dr. Tricia Bent-Goodley joined us to talk about why this survey and why now.
This was a partnership between the Washington Post and the Kaiser Family Foundation. It really came from the newsroom and wanting to take a deep look at black women. We're at a time today where black women are being hammered by this recession, but they're also some of the most prominent women in the country. So looking and hearing from black women themselves about where they feel like they are.
But you also had the Washington Post series several years ago that dealt with black men that Kevin Merida also was involved with. And so was that also a part of it in terms of?
That was a part of the conversation. That series was really successful in terms of being able to look at black men, profiling black men, and we have wanted since then to do the same thing with black women, so the resource and timing just clicked this time.
I think some folks might be surprised with some of these results. What stood out for the both of you, Rahel and Dr. What really jumped out where you even said, wow, I didn't even think that was going to be the case?
Well, I think what stood out for me was one of the parts of the survey that talked about stress, and that so many of the women who responded, over 40% or around 40%, said that they were experiencing some form of stress. And in light of what we know that black women experience in terms of some of the challenges in our communities, we thought that that number could be a little bit low, but I think that it also speaks to the strengths and resilience of black women. We tend not to see the negative. We look at the positive, and so I think that really reminded us of the strength that we have among women.
And so I was surprised by how much black women are prioritizing their religion over and above the desire to be married and have children, which came out in the survey. And so I see it in my personal life among my peers, but to actually know that this is something that's widespread, and myself as a theologian and minister, it really made me wonder, what is it that women are latching onto when it comes to Christian faith that may be more important than marriage at this point?
I want to speak on the whole issue of kids, and 63% said they felt it's okay to have a child and not be married. And which is about the same for white women. I recently hosted a two-part special with Bishop T.D. Jakes at the Potter's House, and one of the biggest issues that we talked about was the lack of dad in a child's life. And so it was interesting when I saw that number, 63%, which also is close to the percentage of black kids who are born out of wedlock. But what happens is after the child is born, what do we then begin to hear? The need for a father in the life. And so what does that say to you that 63% would say, hey, I'm fine with it, but on the flip side of that, you have another whole different conversation?
Well, for me, that figure meant just what you said, that you have nearly that percentage of African-American women who are heading households as single women. And so for them to say that it's not acceptable to have a child outside of marriage would be to say what I have done is not acceptable. So I think in a straight survey, you're going to see people where if you have a deeper conversation, you'll hear about the need for a father, about the need for black men in the household.
And I agree with that. I think that part of the challenge is that so many times as black women, we look at what we think our reality might be instead of what we sometimes may really want. And I do think that black women see the value of black men in the home. They see the value of fathers, but they may not necessarily feel like that might be their reality at that moment.
You talked to a 17-year-old, Alani, and she talked about television and how black women are shown to be so mean. I've been highly critical on this show of reality shows. I can't stand most of them. And I've said that whether it's Real Housewives of Atlanta, whether it's Love and Basketball, Hip Hop, whatever the hell those shows are called, that when you see those shows, black women are seen as absolutely crazy, deranged, out of control. And were the women in this survey saying that that feeds into the perception in the workplace, in the real world, of how black women are?
I Black women did say in many follow-up interviews that they're tired of these stereotypes, right? The strong black woman, the angry black woman, the manless black woman, and I think that's a lot of what's reflected in some of these reality TV shows. Now, let's be honest, right? Who are watching these shows?
Right, and that's my biggest deal. You get mad about something, but then you're talking about it on Twitter and Facebook, and you're watching it.
So what really came through, I had a long conversation with Beverly Bond, you know, the DJ from New York, who also founded Black Girls Rock. And what she said was, what we really want to see is a three-dimensional picture of ourselves, right? So you have these figures on reality television, but you also want to see black women who are mothers, black women who are working hard, just, you know, to purse the mainstream media in a way that we haven't.
I completely agree. That's my bias too. I think that reality TV shows have shown black women in very negative ways. And what I always say to, as a social worker, what I often say to parents really is that if you're going to allow your child to watch it, at least watch it with them, so you can explain to them that what they're seeing is television and not real. And so I think it's important for us because, like you said, people are watching it, but we need to be able to discern between what's real and what isn't.
Right, and I think black women also need to create more of their own mediums, whatever that is, perhaps launching their own TV networks, perhaps launching their own web series or magazines or whatever outlets allow them to better represent who we are.
Well, I want to go back to also the point you made about marriage earlier. And so more than 20 years ago, Jungle Fever came out. And, of course, you had such this huge passion over the whole issue of interracial marriages. And even today, that is still a hot topic among black women. Let's just be straight up honest.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think in interviews I found, and let's just start with the census data, right? So what do we know? We know that black men are twice as likely to be married outside of their race than black women are. That's just a fact. But we did find in the survey that of single black women, 50% said that they had dated interracially. Now, they don't marry at those same rates, but there has been a conversation taking place. You know, a book came out this past year about is marriage only for white people? I'm not getting the title exactly right. But that author is advocating that black women do begin to look, you know, not only at black men, but at a wider range of men when they're looking for mates.